創業式無限に身で死に無 And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, our resident waifu hunter and the man who wants to be a hero, good brother Coops.
Traffic will always be my number one op, but I would rather take Atlanta traffic before watching an episode of SAO because fuck SAO.
If the TRPG over in Japan ever gets translated, I'm probably gonna drag you into going through that.
You're gonna have to catch me for that shit, bro.
I'm pretty fast, but I can get. But it won't be that bad because Kawahara didn't write it, much like the video games.
As long as we tracking.
But yes, this is a impromptu episode because things ended up landing on my lap that I wasn't quite expecting over the last few weeks. Now, Titan Effect is something that isn't new to this channel. In fact, one of my earliest interviews was with its designer, Christian Nome, and I've had him on multiple occasions over the years since. And I've always described Titan Effect as a hybrid between Metal Gear Solid and X-Men. In fact, he described it as that at one point.
Yeah.
But he, much like the rest of us, wears his weebness on his sleeve. And for the longest time, it's been operating in the Savage Worlds umbrella. But I remember a while back on the Knight Errant Discord server, he talked about wanting to experiment with other systems. I do remember. I don't know if it was me or somebody else, but I remember the thought of using a D20 system was brought up, and I think either I shot it down or somebody else did. It's been a while, and I don't feel like going through the archives. And I may have played a hand in this. I'll have to double check because he's gearing up for converting Titan Effect to the Year Zero system. Especially since in the wake of the OGL fiasco, the people behind it, Free League, had decided to put in a kind of open license for the Year Zero engine. They're already leaning towards that anyways. They just decided to go whole hog with it after that because, well, I've already gone into that particular shit show from 2 years ago. And how it pretty much caused everybody in the industry to go into panic mode for about 3 weeks. But the Year Zero engine is one that I've talked about in the past. Some of you may recall I covered the Alien RPG a while back, it wasn't the first to use the system, but it was one of the major breakouts of using it. Especially since we hadn't had an Alien RPG since the 90s. And that one is on the list of things I will never run, even if I'm paid.
Not even if I gave you like $200.
Oh, you could not afford it to have me run that. You need top tier money to get me to do that, and it's not for paying me off. It's for hazard pay because I'm gonna have to go through those rules and try and make it work.
Yeah, never mind then.
The long and short of it was the Alien Adventure game was a product of a certain trend back in the 90s of people trying to make these ridiculously detailed systems in the name of simulation. It was using Phoenix Command as a base, and Phoenix Command I don't care for it. I didn't care for it back then, I haven't cared for it since. But obviously the Year Zero engine has gotten plenty of love over the years, whether it be through Alien, which now is going into its second edition, whether it be through Mutant Year Zero or Forbidden Lands or Vaesen, so on and so forth. And as well as a less dipole based variant within the Year Zero family that was used as the basis for the 3rd edition of Twilight 2000. Which I do have. I will end up covering one of these days, but not tonight. Now, this particular quick start runs it at about 79 pages, but the 2 missions that were in the quick start, one of them originally in there and then one that was added in, we will not be covering for the same reason I've skipped over missions, modules, adventures, what have you, in other episodes of the Valley. And even in my own content, I don't like running the risk of somebody looking at a deep dive I do and getting spoiled on a certain module that their GM might be running. Even if the chances are unlikely, unlikely is not 0.
Right.
So the first few pages are a little bit of a comic book on the setting, dealing with a bio research facility in Norway of Ares. And just through these few pages, as you can see here, you can kind of see why I made the Metal Gear Solid comparison earlier.
Yeah, I can see.
Mm-hmm. And as an aside, one cute thing that he did that I enjoy is having these hyperlinks set up that it would look like a future like the kind of data pad gimmick you'd see in a sci-fi work if you were reading this on a tablet. Especially with the hyperlinks at the top of the page, for instance.
Yeah.
So, first we get into the overview. Titan Effect Zero is a tactical espionage and sci-fi role-playing game. It takes place in a contemporary world where spies gifted with psychic powers clash with genetically enhanced soldiers in a secret war in which the fate of human evolution is at stake. Players play special operatives gifted with psychic abilities and work for the international clandestine organization known as the Spear. They carry out perilous missions worldwide, fight against dangerous creatures, and battle insidious organizations. Some are there to make a difference, others to taste adventures, while others have nowhere else to go. And obviously after that it goes into what's in the quick start and what is a RPG. Pretty standard affair.
Yeah.
And then we go with Welcome to the Spear. Welcome aboard, operative. You have completed your training and all the aptitude tests. You're now a full member of the Special Executive Assault and Recon, or what everyone calls the Spear. You and your fellow operatives have the arduous task of protecting the world from biological and paranormal threats. But you are not alone. This section will reveal the many dangers that await you and will prepare you for your future missions. So what is the Spear? The Spear is a clandestine and independent organization with no affiliation whatsoever. It operates at an international level to prevent the world from falling into chaos. However, only a few individuals and organizations know its existence. British intelligence created the Spear to counter the Nazis and their psychic research program during World War II. Composed of psychic soldiers and spies, the organization proved to be a vital asset in the fight against the Axis forces before being disbanded after the war. However, considering their mission was not finished, with the arrival of the Cold War and new threats, the surviving members reformed the Spear into an independent international task force. The main objective of the Spear is to track and neutralize eugenics and psychic threats without taking sides. However, the world is changing alarmingly, and Spear has to face new threats each day while trying to adapt. Their tenets are the following: ensure the organization's secrecy, Monitor individuals and organizations suspected of using eugenics or psychic abilities for illegal activities, terrorism, or destabilization attempts. Preempt and combat eugenics and psychic threats. Recruit new potential agents. Search and secure psychics from malicious hands. So, I'm pretty sure there's a few organizations and other media that are coming to mind with this description of Spear.
I got Psychonauts out of that shit.
A little less cartoon. I can see that with the psychic part, but that's it. But the two big things with the World of Titan effect is obviously the psychics, which is self-explanatory, and bioaugmented soldiers, or BAS, which obviously violates every law in the book on bioethics. But this is where you get kind of uplifted animal or human animal hybrid kind of soldiers, like you saw in that mini comic. I guess I'd describe them as a less horrifying version of BOWs in Resident Evil.
You know what? Yeah, I can see why you'll make that comparison.
But then we have the different factions. First is the Olympians, which is a successor to the old British East India Company, and is your classic clandestine organization. Then you have Ares, which is a very powerful PMC. The Directorate, which is an organization that wants to build a psychic-dominated world. The terrorist organization Typhon, who have a post-human agenda. And the Order of the Holy Mystery, a Catholic-rooted organization that wants to eliminate both BAS and psychics. And several others. And then right after that we have a nice little glossary, which is going to be reminiscent of the lexicon sections that are in a lot of White Wolf games.
Right.
Then shortly after that we have role-playing Titan effect. You know, the Game Master, the different abbreviations, but all of these are gonna be familiar. Like, you don't need me to explain what a NPC is.
Nope.
But then we have the tools of the game. There's the base dice, which is either going to be D6s, D8s, D10s, or D12s. And this is going to be a case where you're going to be rolling one die for your attribute, one for your skill. You need a roll of 6 or higher on a base die for it to be a success. A roll of 10 or higher means 2 successes. And sometimes you can get advantage, which means you can add a third die to the roll, counting all of them. Or you can get disadvantage, which removes the lower of your base dice. Then we have pushing. If you fail a roll, you can push it. This means you get to re-roll the die, but any one rolled while pushing will inflict stress on you. So, you get a do-over, but you best not screw it up.
Oh.
You know, because you're literally pushing your luck. Now...
That would be...
After that, it goes into a bit on pre-gen characters. Sorry about that. What was that?
I didn't say anything.
All right. We also have a thing on initiative. Unlike most games that would do the rolling for initiative, in this case, and this is one of the things that's in the SRD for for the Year Zero engine, you're using a playing card deck.
Ah, here we go again.
What do you mean?
I was referencing our Sword World campaign and the fact that I had so many fucking cards.
Yeah, some of that was on me, but you still rolled you still had traditional initiative in that one, mostly.
I know.
But let's see, then a thing on missions. Missions are basically your modules for this. Then measuring time, which is basically the fact that there are 3 types of time units that are referenced throughout the book: rounds, stretches, and shifts, and what they're used in. A round is 5 to 10 seconds, usually used in combat. A stretch is usually 5 to 10 minutes, used in exploration, and a shift is usually 5 to 10 hours, used in travel. And then, right after that, it goes into the inspirations. And I'm always glad when a given game lists this off, because it means I don't have to. Like in those primers where I write out recommended viewing material.
Oh yeah.
But there's plenty of familiar names, like with Be the Beginning, Black Lagoon, Dark Angel, Darker Than Black, Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, Witch Hunter Robin. All of those certainly fit the vibe. You also have, obviously, Akira is brought up, but unlike certain people, Ruckman, this is a case where referencing Akira actually makes sense. And I only say that because I have a bit of a pet peeve whenever certain folks say that they're inspired by anime, and all that they're referencing is like the first 6 minutes of Akira or referencing
The Akira slide.
Yeah, referencing the Akira slide or the transformation sequence from Sailor Moon, and using that to say, see, we know about anime. Using the Akira slide or the Sailor Moon transformation is the most basic bitch kind of reference you can make.
That's what you get for messing with fucking tourists out there.
And if you're gonna do the whole "we're inspired by anime," I don't think it's unreasonable for me to ask, okay, what anime? You can't just say Akira and Cowboy Bebop or the like, and then not expect me to go, couldn't you pick something a little less obvious? But when it comes to comic books, obviously X-Men is mentioned as a reference, though I would say as far as what brand of X-Men, probably the Claremont era, and maybe the post-Liefeld era of, say, X-Force.
Perhaps.
Maybe a bit of X-Factor, depending on when you tackle it. Obviously, Hellboy and the BPRD is brought up. That's going to be pretty obvious, as well as Checkmate.
Yeah.
I do find it amusing that under fiction, the island of Dr. Moreau is brought up, and I'm glad that the book is brought up and not the movie, because calling the Dr. Moreau movie a shit show would be an insult to shit shows.
I've only read the novel, so I'll take your word for it.
It involved Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando arguing over who's the biggest diva on set.
Yeah, keep me away from that shit.
Keep in mind, this was 90s Val Kilmer, where he was such an asshole several studios didn't want to touch him.
Yeah, even I don't want to touch that.
Mhm. And obviously, it's funny that I brought up Resident Evil earlier because, well, on the video game end of things, Resident Evil is brought up here. Uh, as well as Alpha Protocol, which I'd say is one of the best worst kind of games. Like, objectively speaking, Alpha Protocol is not a good game. Yeah, I'm not going to try and glaze it up into something that it isn't. But I think for a lot of people, it scratched an itch they didn't know they have. You know, doing a stealth RPG where you're playing as a agent that can go in a whole lot of directions. But moving right along, we have the rules on the operative itself. And once again, I do like this whole username and password thing that they have in here. And if you hit the never mind. I thought that there was a hyperlink there, but there isn't. There is one for confirm, but it's a nice little bit of verisimilitude, I guess. But then we have your operative. This is just going to be going into the way the stats work. First, you have your attributes: strength, agility, wits, and empathy. Each is rated on a scale from A to D and is connected to a specific die type. From bottom to top, it's D6, D8, D10, and D12. The attributes also determine how much health and resolve you have. Resolve is basically how much stress you can take. Then you have a similar thing when it comes to skills, still rated from D through A, still using that range of D6 to D12. Of course, then you have talents, which are tricks, moves, and minor abilities that give you a slight edge. And then powers, which both of them have their own section. There's also the concept of person. Go ahead.
I was saying I can't wait to look through that.
Mm-hmm. You also have the concept of personality traits, which I'd say are ones that could be used as a way to give character background, or if you're the GM, character blackmail. Yeah. And right after that is gear. Your operative starts with a encrypted smartphone, which with access to Secure's SpearNet database, a sublocal comlink, a standard pistol, and equipment points based on the Spear rank to spend before each mission. Clothes and gear used to carry other gear do not count towards your encumbrance and do not need to be noted down. Each pre-gen is already equipped for the booklet's mission. The EP part.
So I would assume the EP point it's like you get points based on the rank, and then like for every session you use those points to like increase your powers and stuff like that.
They're used to get equipment. Full stop.
So just equipment only.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, the whole prep phase that you see in God knows how many shooters, where you're kitting out your firearms and picking out perks and the like, that is handled by equipment. Or
gotcha.
If I have to use a more espionage based approach, that one Q scene that's in every Bond movie. And as well as the thing of, please bring it back in one piece. It's never brought back in one piece.
Never is.
But then we have skills and talents. Now, skills are self-explanatory, and each one has a associated attribute that they're tied to. We've got a shorthand list of that kind of thing. There are... Now, as mentioned before, if you want to succeed, you need a roll of 6 or higher on either dice. You're going to be rolling 1 die for your attribute and 1 die for your skill. Sometimes, if you have the right gear, you can get an advantage and thus roll another die. If you get 2 or more successes, you succeed and you get some additional bonus.
Ooh.
Of course, if you get even more, then you get an even bigger bonus. Or you, if you're doing attacks, you increase the damage done by 1 point. Now, if you roll no successes, then you fail, obviously.
Obviously.
But you do have the opportunity to push a roll, as mentioned before. Now, the thing is that even though a push is a second chance, there's a catch. As is mentioned in No Pain, No Gain. Pushing always comes with a risk. After a pushed roll, you immediately suffer 1 point of damage if you rolled strength or agility, or 1 point of stress if you rolled for wits or empathy, for each bane or 1 rolled on your base die. If this damage or stress breaks you, this happens after the action is resolved. Now, as hinted at, a result of a 1 is a bane. Banes cannot be re-rolled, even when pushing. And furthermore, you can only push a skill roll once. So, best not fuck up.
Well, if my luck is anything to go by, it'll probably be better than John's.
Well, it's going to be better than Mike's, I can guarantee you that. But once you've rolled the die and once you push the roll, you cannot make that roll again to achieve the same goal. You're going to need to try something different. Now, when it comes to advantage and disadvantage, the type of die that you add is always the lower of the two die. So if you're rolling D8 and D6 and you have advantage, you're adding another D6 to the roll. Whereas if you have disadvantage, you remove the lower of the 2 die. So you're only rolling 1 die. You can still push the roll, but you're still only rolling 1 die. And if you have both advantage and disadvantage, they cancel each other out. But they don't stack. If you get it from several sources, it only counts as a single one. I know that's standard fare for the Year Zero system, but there's a reason I liked the way advantage and disadvantage worked in Emberwind, because you could stack it. They cancel each other out, but you could stack it.
Yeah,
And getting
that was
help
very useful.
Yeah, getting help is one way you can get advantage. But instead of just doubling your lowest base die when someone's helping you, the helper contributes their base die for the skill level to the roll. Which is a good way to actually utilize the help mechanic, which is something that gets underutilized in a lot of games because there's not as much of a benefit. A lot of times aiding someone just gives them a +2 to the roll. Like, whoop-de-doo. And obviously then it goes into opposed rolls, which are exactly what it sounds like. Both sides roll, you want to try and get more hits than the other. And right after that it goes into the different skills. And I think a lot of the skills are self-explanatory in terms of what they're going to be doing. Though I will note that we have a simple approach when it comes to hacking. It's just a tech rule.
Okay.
Which, the reason why I point that out is when it comes to hacking mechanics, some games end up treating hacking like this duet system between the hacker and the GM. I've never been a fan of it, but that particular mode of thinking seems to be on its way out.
That's good. That's good.
Let's see, but then we get to talents. There's only a handful of talents, obviously, for this quick start, and it's mainly for reference for the pregens. But we do have a few of note. Uh, I didn't mention it earlier, but with combat you have a slow action and a fast action. But it is still a very theater of the mind kind of approach. But for example, hand-to-hand combat expert, when blocking a close combat attack, you inflict damages if you access successes. There's a bit of a typo there. Or can choose to perform a special attack instead. Or you have things like Inquisitive. You can push any skill roll based on wits twice, not just once. Or things like Hacker, where you get an advantage to tech rolls when attempting to hack computers. You know, talents in this are akin to feats, but it's a lot simpler. In fact, I think the most complicated talents on this list are Command and Second Wind.
I argue command is probably the most tedious.
Probably the most complex.
Yeah.
I could see it. But then we have powers. And obviously, most of the power system is going to come from the psychics, which there are four.
Oh yeah.
There are 4 disciplines: biokinesis, extrasensory perception, psychokinesis, and telepathy. And biokinesis is messing with organics. ESP and telepathy are self-explanatory. Psychokinesis is manipulation of matter or energy. But when it comes to the energy type, you do have to pick one of them to define your power set. And the options are cold, electricity, kinetic, fire, and sound.
Yeah, no aquakinesis. That makes me sad.
I'm sure that can be added in the full book in time. Remember, we're looking at a quick start.
Right.
But when you create your psychic, you start with 3 power points that you can spend on a discipline. If a power has different levels, you need to buy it at first and buy the first one and the others after. Psychics evolve naturally with time and experience, so you only need to spend the right amount of XP to improve your powers or get new ones. As a psychic, you can access 1 discipline only. Now, when it comes to using powers, you have to make a focus roll to activate your power. If you fail, you can't retry it before the next stretch or round if it's a combat power. You can push the roll, but instead of suffering points of stress, you roll 1d6 for each Bane on the Psychic Surge table. You can maintain a number of active powers equal to your maximum resolve minus the number of stress points. And obviously we have the table for Psychic Surge. This is basically the equivalent of Magical Backlash. Or Power Backlash. You get the idea.
Yeah.
So You have plenty of power, but if you are not careful with it, it can blow up in your face. Sometimes quite literally. It could either drain you or physically hurt you, or completely backfire, depending on how bad you screwed up. But in order to get the worst cases, you'd have to generate nothing but Banes and then roll nothing but boxcars on the surge table. But then we have the powers itself. Each of them has an action timing, so whether it's a slow or fast action, the range, and how long it lasts. And obviously there's not going to be a whole lot of powers for each because, again, Quickstart. But you can kind of see the vibe that they're going for with each discipline.
Right. I can see.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, given what you mentioned about aquakinesis, you'd probably take psychokinetic.
Yep.
But the reason for the one next to some of them is that some of them are going to have enhanced versions, but that's something we'll get into later. On the other hand, you have chimeras. Originally created by Ares, chimeras are bio-augmented soldiers genetically enhanced with animal or artificial DNA. They are designed to be stronger, faster, and possess unique abilities. All chimeras are humans who have been abducted and forced to endure accelerated gene therapy and brainwashed to be obedient. However, the Spear managed to save a few and even recruited some of them as operatives. Chimeras have human morphology with animal characteristics, forcing them to wear balaclava and loose clothing to hide their features. This means they're also usually deployed on stealth operations and in isolated areas to avoid inconvenient witnesses. So a chimera starts with 2 power points that they can spend based on their animal type. Contrary to psychic powers, chimeras' abilities are always on and don't require any roll except for combat type powers. And of course, as you develop, you can spend XP to improve powers or get new ones.
As expected.
Mm-hmm. So, and there's only 4 powers that we have in this quick start: fleet-footed, leaping, natural armor, and natural weapons. And when you're starting out, you're getting 2 of them. But after that we have combat and damages. So you can play with maps if you want to, but this is very much a theater of the mind kind of game, rather than full-on grid combat. Maps are at most divided into zones, but there's no hard and fast rule about how much a zone is.
Right.
As mentioned before, you're drawing cards for initiative. Though you're only grabbing the numbered cards. Specifically, ones numbered 1 through 10, and you only need like 1 suit's worth of them. The initiative starts with card number 1 and goes down until you get to number 10. Now, if you have surprise, i.e., if you manage to get the drop on the enemy, you can choose any initiative you want instead of drawing a card. And during a fight, you can exchange your initiative card with another player character or allied NPC as long as their turn hasn't come up yet. So it is an interesting kind of initiative slot system. And obviously in this kind of thing, it's aces low, because there's no one card, so the ace is going to be the one. But I think you can see the approach that they're going for initiative to kind of simplify the matter.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it might throw some people off who are used to hearing the words roll initiative, but you're still dealing with initiative. It's just in a significantly more controlled manner. I'd say it's also going to make it easier to track, because you've only got 10. There's only 10 numbers you've got to go with, so each round's making as okay, who's got initiative 2, then 3, then 4, and so on.
Hey, the less complicated, the better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, it's probably gonna be a little bit of handholdy, but I think it's the better option in the end here.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the way actions work. You have one slow action, one fast action, or 2 fast actions. And we'll get to what those will be in a moment. In fact, right now, because we have a nice little chart about what counts as a slow and fast action. And a lot of major actions would count as slow, whereas fast would be minor actions in other games. Things like retreating, seeking cover. The only real offensive option is grapple attack. But that's assuming you've, well, grappled them already.
Right.
And we also get a thing on ambushes and sneak attacks. Sneak attacks are a stealth roll. If you're close enough to attack in melee combat, you get a disadvantage. If you fail, the enemy notices you. If you succeed, your attack counts as surprising, so you can choose whichever initiative card you want. You also get an advantage for a close combat sneak attack, and the target cannot block the attack. Whereas ambush is, the standard lying in wait for the enemy. Each target of an ambush would use an observation roll to spot the ambush, with a disadvantage if the attackers are well prepared. All those who fail get the bottom cards, counting from 10 and up, randomly drawn. Yep. And of course, close combat uses the hand-to-hand skill. If the roll succeeds, you hit your adversary and inflict your weapon's base damage rating on them. Each extra success will increase the damage by 1. You do get an advantage if your target is defenseless or unaware. It's not further increased if the target is prone, so you're not doubling down on that. And that being said, you can do a special attack, which is just doing the attack action, but trying to do something other than damage. Push, trip, grapple, that kind of thing.
Right.
And speaking of which, grappling is a opposed melee roll, which certainly makes sense if you're trying to get out of the grapple. I do also like the diving blow that we have here. If you, in a single round, first move into engaged range of an enemy and then attack them with an unarmed blow, you get an advantage to the attack. This is called a diving blow. If your attack hits, you inflict damage normally, and both you and the target fall prone. If the attack fails, only you fall to the ground. It's the plunging attack.
So, is he breaking ankles or not?
Breaking ankles or DFA.
I'll accept that.
Mm-hmm. but you can also use melee. You can also use melee contested action to block a melee attack to avoid getting hit. It doesn't count as an action, and you don't have to declare that you're attempting to block before the attacker rolls for their strike. When you roll it, it's a melee roll. Each success eliminates one success from the attacker's roll. You don't get anything from extra successes. Or any extra if everything else is canceled out, I should say. If you're unarmed, you can only block unarmed attacks from other humanoids. To block an armed close attack, or an attack by an animal or beast of some type, you need to wield some kind of sturdy weapon or tool. And we have a similar kind of attack setup when it comes to ranged combat. The only real difference is the, range, as well as a modifier if you're firing at a large target, or a disadvantage if you're firing at a small target. When they say small, they mean like a handheld thing. Like shooting somebody's radio out.
Right.
You can aim, however, and that is going to give you an advantage up to your maximum range. And there are a few other modifiers when it comes to range, but we're not because of the simplification it's going for. You're not really using ammo in the traditional sense. All firearms have a rate of fire rating from 2 for a typical pistol to 5 or 6 for full auto weapons. You can add as many ammo dice to your attack as you like, from 0 up to the rate of fire, or the number of rounds left in your magazine minus 1, whichever is lower. For example, if you have 3 rounds left, you can add up to 2 ammo dice. If you have only 1 round left, you cannot add any ammo dice to our roll. In this case, or if you use no ammo dice, only 1 round of ammunition is used. Rolling a 6 on an ammo die is a success, just like with a d6 base die. But successes on ammo dice do not contribute to hitting your target. Instead, if your attack hits, checking only the base die. Each success of your ammo dice can be used to either increase the damage by 1 step, or trigger an additional hit on the same target or a secondary target in the same zone. Each additional hit inflicts base damage, and the damage increased by 1 for each further success you spend on it. After your roll, you sum up the d6 digits on all your ammo dice, and then add 1 to the result. That is the sum total of the amount of ammo you've spent. And because of that, you kind of have a bit of ammo tracking, but it's in a way that actually contributes. Because in doing this, you have a incentive to have spray and pray as an option. For a pistol, you're only adding up to 2 die. For some full auto weapons, you could add up to 6. And those are going to have bigger clips anyways.
That is true.
And obviously you do have the option to overwatch, which is basically, I am sitting here, and as soon as something pops its head out, I am shooting it. Also known as the Troa Barton School of Combat. Now, then we have the weapons proper. The main thing to note is the critical threshold. If you inflict damage over that threshold in a single attack, you inflict a critical injury. Critical injuries are akin to a wound system, instead of the whole critical you do additional damage.
Right.
But we have a few close combat weapon examples, and then we get into damage and stress, which I kind of already hinted at, as well as the stress factor of stressful situations. Then some of the ranged weapons. I can't help but be amused that the good old Walter PPK is on this list with all the Bond jokes, as well as the FAMAS. Which what's amusing about the FAMAS was used um as the combat rifle in Metal Gear Solid. What's amusing about that is FAMAS is a French design. Foxhound is an American Special Forces unit. I think in story they tried to do something about importing and the like, but the real reason the FAMAS was used as a base was because of its blocky design, so it would be easier to render on the PS1's graphics.
Wait.
I think you've seen what a proper FAMAS looks like, haven't you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I totally did.
with how blocky that is, that'd be easier to render than some standard rifles. Or it'd be easier to render on the PS1 than say an AK at that time, without looking too weird.
Then again, 3D models on the PS1 were fucking weird all the time.
So use a weird gun.
But we haven't even gotten to the PS2 and the Ratchet and Clank trilogy yet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but obviously there's the whole thing with body armor and cover, and then we have the critical table. If you get a critical injury, you have to roll 2d6 and consult this table. And some of the critical injuries are lethal, some of them are not. And as you can see, the criticals can get particularly nasty. Especially since each one has a certain amount of healing time in usually days. Or in some cases, it's permanent. And there's a separate chart just for mental critical injuries. So that's something to watch out for. And this is pretty standard fare. The core Year Zero engine has these kind of things.
I wonder if they're gonna add hallucination to one of the mental critical injuries.
It's already there.
What? Where? I don't see that.
Look at the bottom of page 52.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
But of course, then we have some other hazards, which are minor things like darkness, what to deal if you're on fire, the whole thing with explosions, falling, drowning, the minor things that are put in every game. We also have a thing on vehicles. The main thing with vehicles is passengers, so how many people can be in it. Maneuverability, the attribute used for vehicle skill rolls. Hull, basically how much damage it can take. Armor, how much damage it can shrug off. And travel speed. There's also rules about altitude and crashes when it comes to aerial vehicles, because if an aerial vehicle gets wrecked, it's not going to be a light tap.
Oh.
And in fact, the vehicles have their own critical damage table, as you can see. But after that, we have chases, which, with chasers, there's always two parties, the chaser and the chased. Both sides select a maneuver. The GM generates an obstacle. The pursuer and prey both reveal their maneuver, and then the maneuvers are resolved. And the chase maneuvers that you have are pursue slash flee, hide, block, cut off, stand and shoot, and miscellaneous. And we do have a nice chart of different obstacles the GM can generate randomly for the different types of chases. You know, we've got one for foot chase and one for vehicle chase. But as a final thing, I'd like to look a little bit into the pre-gens, so you can kind of see their setup in action. That's going to be on page 72.
I'm getting there now.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So as you can kind of see how it's set up. Instead of writing it as the die size, it's written in a grade setup. So, for example, Kate with a strength of C means that she has a D8 for strength. I do kind of wish the sheets here were set up on a character sheet set up proper, but I have a feeling that'll be coming down the road.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably next update or so.
Mm-hmm. But that covers the gist of Titan Effect by way of the Year Zero engine. But from what you saw of it, what do you think? Because I'll have a different approach.
Kind of reminds me of what Elsewhere was like. Only is a lot more simple. Only I think things was a lot more simpler compared to what Everwind was having. It's a lot more simplified, and I still need to look through like most of like the critical injuries and whatnot. I like the fact there's also critical injuries for like vehicles as well.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting to me because vehicles and vehicle chases is one of those things people have tried to replicate in more cinematic games, but the amount of people who've gotten it in a way that it actually gets used could be better. Just a little.
Right.
Mostly because a lot of times people end up overcomplicating it regarding spacing. But this isn't one of those kind of situations. Now, coming to this from my perspective, I'm someone who's familiar with Titan Effect already. And a lot of it is exactly what I expected. This is very much Titan Effect with the Year Zero engine. A lot of the questions that I'd want to ask regarding it are ones that aren't going to be in a quick start. Chief among them is how advancement's going to work and how the idea of a spear rank is going to work. Because those kind of things are going to be crucial. I'm also wondering if there's the possibility of playing as someone who isn't a psychic or a chimera, but I realize that it'd be redundant since that's kind of the point. But I don't know. Maybe down the road I might house rule playing as a blank or something like that. Just as a fun little experiment.
You're the GM. You can be able to pull something off like that within reason.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that that's using that 2 dice setup instead of the D6 pool. and that is something I'd be curious to see why that route was taken instead of the D6 pool approach. I mean, I'm sure there's reasons for it, but I'd be curious as to what those reasons are. But Year Zero is quickly gaining its own niche for people who want something snappy, but also want it to be highly lethal. Since you can have that with Savage Worlds, but Savage Worlds can lend itself to more superpowery, pulpy affairs as well. But that's not going to be a problem. That's not going to be a problem here. It'll be interesting when I revisit Titan Effect via Savage Worlds sometime next year. But but what we have here is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'm liking this.
I mean, if I end up running it, I'll have to fight the urge to not find a way to sneak in the old Mission Impossible theme in this.
If not you, somebody else will.
Mm-hmm. I know it'd be tempting to invoke James Bond, but no. That's a little too obvious, even for me. But with that said, I know this was a relatively brief one. I say, though, it's around the same amount of time as our normal ones. And I did skim a bunch, but I wanted to try and hit the high notes. So, this will be it for now when it comes to Titan Effect, though expect things to revisit here in the future. And of course, tomorrow, Coops and I will be continuing our look at Shin Megami Tensei 2000X. In fact, let me check what the subject matter is for tomorrow. Give me a moment. So tomorrow we're getting into the rules proper. We're at the midway point on that.
Oh, we're pulling double duty, baby.
And later tonight I will be doing a impromptu stream going into FF7 Remake. The one I planned on doing last night, but things happened. So keep an eye out for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
soi 上洛な上長年関税 年関税を年々重心期年々不利し関税ラーメン物理を物理を物理を細い上落が上昇年関税を年関税を年々重心期年々不利し関税を我所